This is a secret transmission. Are you going to inbound this year? The big HubSpot event in Boston, September 5th through 8th. If you are going to inbound, boy, do we have something amazing lined up. HubSpot and Reveal are partnering to bring you Nearbound at Night, the add-on event of the event. This is the Inbound Plus event that you don't want to miss. Thursday, September 7th, Nearbound at Night, HubSpot and Reveal. We are doing a mini golf tournament, amazing food, drinks, ridiculous atmosphere, toasts on the hour from industry leaders from companies like HubSpot, PartnerStack, Reveal, Mind Matrix, 6 Sense. We've got a whole bunch of people are going to be there. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Nearbound at Night during the Inbound conference. If you want to go, this is VIP only. It's very limited. The space has a limited number of spots available. They are filling up quickly. But if you want to go, shoot me an email, isaac@reveal.co. That's ISAAC@reveal.co. And I will send you the special link. Nearbound at Night during the Inbound conference. It's going to be the place to be. Hope to see you there.
All right. What is up, PartnerUp? We're back. Isaac, how you been, my man? It was super fun to hang out with you and the crew at the Casa. We got a little office building down here.
Hey, we're getting a cluster down in St. Pete little by little. So slowly, magnetically attracting all of the talent to the area.
Yes, indeed. Excited for that. And this is going to be a fun one because we get to circle back kind of on a story that we started on the PartnerUp podcast with my good friend Christian Ratch, who was with Discover.org and then ZoomInfo right when ZoomInfo went public. And excited to talk about a ton of things, including that kind of transformation story with Katie Landaal. Welcome to PartnerUp.
Hey guys, happy to be here.
Yeah, Jared, I was talking to Katie before you hopped on, and I was like, talk about the Nearbound influence play. I think we've had like 4 or 5 people be like, you need to have Katie on the podcast. You need to have Katie on the podcast. So
I feel so honored.
you're doing something right, man. Everybody's looking to you. Katie, while we were chatting, I'll ask you again something I asked you before because I think it's really interesting. We should have had record on at the time, but I asked you, have you seen an uptick in interest in partnerships? Because I know in addition to your work at ZoomInfo, you kind of help other people. You do a little bit of kind of, consulting here and there. People come to you. They know you've been in it for 15 years or so. Have you seen an uptick in interest in people coming to you and saying, all right, we got to figure out this partner thing? And if so, when did that start?
100%. I mean, it really started, for me at least, consulting. It started a couple years ago and it was just projects here and there and I would just help folks out. I would say really it started hockey sticking in the last year and then especially in the last 6 months. And I honestly think it's just because there's just been so much more of a spotlight on partnerships and how important it is. And now it's becoming a main motion for go-to-market for any of these massive organizations that before it was always on its own island or, just kind of the redheaded stepchild that nobody really wanted to deal with. And so I think that that's what's made it really kind of explode, especially being so present.
It's so funny because when I asked you that, I'm like, have you noticed an uptick? You're like, absolutely. And you said it kind of started about a year ago, or really started 6 months ago. And I'm just thinking that's exactly been our experience, basically that same timeline. And I was telling you, I'm new to the partnership space. And a little over a year and a half ago, Jared was like, convinced me, okay, we got to go launch this partner hacker thing. And he told me, he's like, Isaac, the partnerships moment is upon us. He's like, it's here.
Love that.
Right at the beginning of the wave, the partnerships moment. And I'm like, he gave me some evidence and some things. I'm like, okay, I can see it. From a high level, I can see it.
Yeah.
But it was like 6 months into Partner Hacker, all of a sudden we really started to feel it. And then starting in 2023, it was like, okay, first we were feeling it from mostly partnerships people and a few others. Now it's like all kinds of people outside of partnerships, sales, marketing, suite.
Yeah.
They're coming and they're asking. And so here's the interesting, this is a double-edged sword for partner people who are primary part of our audience. This is a huge opportunity for them, but it's also a threat for some of them. And this is something that I've noticed that, they've kind of had the luxury in a bull market economy where companies are kind of flush with VC and whatnot to sort of be in their department that's not seen as super relevant, and that's kind of comfortable for some of them. Like maybe it's frustrating at times, but it's also like, yeah, I can just hang out, make friends with people, be liked by everyone, go to events, not that big of a deal. Now suddenly the boss is knocking on your door and they're like, you're going to solve our problems. What are we doing with Partner?
Yeah.
Some people are like, big opportunity, and some people are freaking out right now.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
A thinning is going to happen.
For sure. I mean, what I've noticed in a lot of these organizations is, I hate to say it, but a lot of the sales guys that didn't really fully make it, they just find their way over to Partner, right? And they kind of hide there for a while. And not to say that's a negative thing. It just means that, that's just kind of where they were placed, and hopefully it worked out well. And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. I think what we're seeing right now is it's just mainly a lot of BD play, right? It's just, going back to the old traditional style of, handshake deals and trust and being able to actually do things together in the right and most efficient way. And so I love that we're seeing more of a spotlight on that, and then actually seeing what the ROI is thereafter. Whereas before it was kind of just a loose thing, right? Oh yeah, we went to dinner. Great. What happened? I don't know. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. The benefits of a tough market, it's like, is hard, but it forces you to identify what's really creating value quickly. And I've sort of wondered, Jared, we've talked about this in some other episodes. I think there's some early indications that we're seeing this. I don't really have any like stats to back this up, something maybe I should look into, but it's almost like the people who sort of like get you there and lay the foundation sometimes are not the ones who take you to the next level. So, okay, I'll give you an example totally separate from this. Back in the early days of like the crypto space, you got all these nerds that are doing all this crypto stuff, and they're like, we're alone. Everyone ignores us. They don't take us seriously. And then all of a sudden, when they're taken seriously, the people who like were there at the beginning, they often get replaced by people who come from a different era. Like, oh, crypto's big now. I'm the guy who used to do a podcast about whatever. Now I'm the crypto podcaster, and they surpass those people. And then it ticks them off sometimes. But like, I wonder if something similar, if now that partnerships is becoming more and more, hey, we need this motion, people from sales, people from marketing, people who have not been there up till now are going to move into a lot of those slots.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's where I get the most requests for help, advice, help me figure this out. What should I do? Where should I start? Yeah, I mean, that's just the way it goes right now.
There's tons. I kind of love that analogy, like what got you here won't get you there. And there's so many like kind of mental models kind of around this. David Cancel from Drift popularized, at least internally, and I don't know how much you wrote about it publicly, was let's say your growth curve versus your company's growth curve, right? So what happens is that if you're growing slower than the company, you'll get hired over. If you're growing faster than the company, you typically leave and go find something else. And what we're seeing right now, in the past year, for example, like on LinkedIn, there being more partnership manager jobs open than account executive jobs. Mm-hmm. That's a fact. That's a stat. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Whoa, that was a big deal. When did that happen, right? That's not something you saw, especially in SaaS. All the way to leadership where, former partner leaders that I trust very much. So let's bring up like a Bobby Napoltonia, Isaac, right? So like he helped create the Salesforce ecosystem. He helped create, the App Exchange. He landed Accenture for Salesforce, which is probably one of the biggest partnerships in all of tech. What's Bobby doing these days? He's not the one leading the charge anymore. He's kind of a CEO and advisor. Whereas I think that there is some new blood coming into the space that isn't former partner leaders. Like if we look at people that, we talk to and hang out with, Chris Walkers or Scott Leases or these other people that come from the CMO or the marketing world or from the sales world are starting to go, hey, we really need to pay attention to this thing now where we weren't before. There's definitely that phenomena, kind of happening everywhere. And frankly, we welcome the new blood, right? I mean, yeah. The partner ecosystem is the best ecosystem.
Hey, I hope you welcome the new blood because that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I mean, come on, Isaac, I chose you. Like, I was like, come on, let's go start this thing, right? Like, we need new blood. And like our last episode, Isaac, where we had on from Ryder, right? So first time partnership manager came from as an account executive, goes into Ryder, and the reason why though I think is very interesting. The context behind this, I think, is the coolest part. Is He's like, I wanted to learn the most about marketing, about sales, about CS, how to run a business, and because I want to be an entrepreneur someday. And that felt like the most natural path to get there. And I'm like, yes, of course, definitely.
Yes.
Those are my favorite entrepreneurs. Pete Caputa from DataBox, right? They've been in those roles. And that's what we're doing, shows like this and, evangelizing, showing that this is probably the most strategic role. Definitely one of the hardest. I mean, Katie, talk a little bit about, that from your perspective, right? Kind of Sales Impact Academy, driving revenue to like doing, ZoomInfo and helping lead this change at a public market cap, big company. It's a bit of a switch, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, to give a little bit of my background. So I've been everywhere from the tiny, minuscule little agency that's 10 people and we're just doing, 12, 15 million a year, all the way up to the, Ingram Micros of the world, now like ZoomInfo, things like that, Allstate even. So I've seen everything from tiny all the way to very large and everything in between. And I think that's what's given me a really different perspective on this stuff. Going back to what you had mentioned before, that's what people don't realize. The partner world and that strategy is much more of a kind of general business, or a little bit of everything, right, to be dangerous, but you're not necessarily specific to engineering. You're not specific to product design. You're not specific to marketing. You're not specific to sales, right? You just have all of that in mind and then pulling that together as a true big picture strategy in order to drive the business forward. So it really is a very interesting role. I think it gets, looked over quite a bit. And I think that, we're also seeing that with a lot more chief product or what are they calling them? Chief partner officers now, which I think is so cool because you just never saw that before. It was always just, a VP of global channel or alliances or partnerships or whatever that meant. But it's really nice to see that a lot of that leadership is coming in and owning that and being able to take it forward.
Katie, I saw you had a LinkedIn post recently. You had a stat on there. You said something, I think you said like 58%. I don't know where the stat where it was. 58% of companies are relying on partnerships to drive revenue, or maybe it's 50% of revenue. I can't remember what the number was.
Yeah. So what we're seeing and what's coming out, with Deloitte and a few of the others and Forresters and Gartners, they're coming out with all these stats showing that partner programs are super influential on their entire revenue plans and streams and, how it rolls out to the rest of the organization, as well as, how it's affecting marketing plays, how it's affecting sales plays, how it's affecting, everything in between. And so I just find there's just all these stats that are now coming out, which is so interesting to me. How they do it, I could not tell you. Yeah. However, reading the reports coming out is fantastic because it also puts another, spotlight on why partnerships is so important and why, everybody's starting to consider it as a main part of their go-to-market action.
Well, yeah, it was interesting because you had, and I've seen a lot of stats set up this way. In fact, I've posted some myself as well, where you kind of have like, hey, here's a stat showing, 58% of revenue is being, tapping into partners in some way.
Yeah.
Yet, on the other side, 40% of companies don't even have a partnerships department. And we've had some similar stats, like 40% of new opportunities opened by B2B SaaS companies, one or more partner had a relationship to that deal, but only 7% of the time are they tapping into that partner in some way. And you kind of have these contrasting stats. I've seen that basic framework in many ways.
Yes.
So my question on that, Katie, is like, okay, so those companies that have no partnerships department, as we're in this partnerships moment where this is becoming more attention's coming to it, more people are looking at it, will they solve that by building a partnerships department, or will they solve it by layering partnerships into another department and not even going the route of having a partnerships department? Like, I'm really curious on that.
Look, you could go either way. There's pros and cons to both, and you just have to figure out what works best for the organization and what is actually advantageous for everyone involved. I think I'm a huge proponent of the crawl, walk, run strategy. So,
Jared, what is going on here?
I know.
So weird.
Like,
so weird.
So weird, right? Everybody says
this in a row where someone has mentioned it.
I have been preaching this from day one. I've always said, make it simple, make it black and white up front, then build from there. Because what happens is a lot of people go into these, partnerships and they think, like you mentioned, Salesforce and Accenture, everybody's like, we're going to do this, right? This is what we're going to do together. We're going to make this amazing. And when you really go back and look at what that history was and what the trajectory was, they started from just one or two clients here or there. Then it started, growing and growing and growing. And then it became such a huge partnership that both organizations were highly, gaining so much revenue from both sides of the house. So what I always say is that you want to really start basic, start black and white, do it well, and then move on into, growing the partner program or growing into other areas that you want to do. So I'm huge on that, and I'll always stick by it.
I love the simple frameworks like that. It's so funny to hear crawl, walk, run pop back up. But I think it's particularly important in a moment where partner professionals are finding themselves not just having to help their partner ecosystem, but truly help each department leader.
Yep.
And you cannot walk into that meeting with that head of marketing or that head of sales with a grandiose plan and all the, here's why an ecosystem strategy, blah, blah, blah. They're like, I have campaigns to run and a pipeline number that I'm woefully behind on. So like, what are you doing? Like, how are you helping?
Right.
So here's my plan to help. And to really lay that out is truly how you become, I think, a change agent and truly helpful inside of your company. Is you have to recognize change is a process, and either you're in control of it or it doesn't happen to you. So I think the opportunity for us partner leaders right now today, and it's kind of funny, the stories that I've heard from the P. Caputas to the Rowleys to the Bobbies to, the people that really were at the table when they transformed into a ecosystem or partner company, they were really good at precipitating change, at helping each department head. And, that kind of approach of black and white, make it simple, totally needed. And in fact, I actually want to double click on that because I feel like, since I was a customer of DiscoverOrg back in 2014 at PandaDoc to seeing ZoomInfo today, I have never seen a company pull more solutions together and do what y'all and Henry have done than I think ZoomInfo has. And I'm curious, with that level of, let's say, product change and platform and all of that, you stack those things on top and then you add partnerships on top.
Yeah. So a couple things happened, right? So you mentioned Christian Resch. She used to run this way back in DiscoverOrg days, used to help in the early days. And what we would see is she would kind of get the random backdoor deals, or I know this guy and this guy knows this person, and now we're connecting and now we're a partner, right? And it was always this kind of very loose relationship. And then they would just didn't know where to put it. And so they say, here, Kristen, take it, right? And then that became a partnerships group. And that's what you saw a lot early on, especially with these larger organizations. When I came on right after they IPO'd, that's when we started getting a lot more strategic and thinking about what are we doing long-term and scalability wise and so forth. And so I managed all of our really big alliances. So we're talking, the GCPs, the AWS, Azure, right? Talking to Salesforce, HubSpot, and so forth, the real big, at-home names. And how does that work between us? Are we co-selling together? Are we just doing joint marketing campaigns together? Is there some way that we're fitting into their foundational, strategy? What does that look like long term? And so I was a huge believer in that. But the way that it works best was, again, going back to crawl, walk, run, we had to find these early wins to kind of prove the point, right? To show that this is what works and this is why it works. I did leave. Just to give context, I did leave for about a year, which I still get crap from Henry about. And I went over to a startup and ran their entire go-to-market and revenue strategy, and then what that looked like also with partnerships and so forth, because that was just a very different motion. It was more of a PLG motion, and that's, obviously partnerships are key there. And then I came back, and now I took over the entire ecosystem for ZoomInfo, and it's been fun. It's been a wild ride, but a lot of it I've just really scaled back, to be honest. There's just been too much of a spray and pray, and too much of we think this is a partnership, but it's not really a partnership. And so we're just going to throw it over to the partner team, and then they're going to manage, the program or the relationship or whatever that looks like. And so a lot of that I've just been really pulling back in a sense of focusing on the things that really are genuinely bringing us value and that are also driving us forward for, our go-to-market motion, both in, product strategy as well as, how we're selling today and how we're coming to the market. So yeah.
And that's such an interesting point. Just a quick thought on that, in this moment where more attention is being given to partnerships, more attention to partnerships and more importance of partnerships doesn't necessarily equal more partnerships.
Yes.
Right. So it's like, hey, we need more revenue. We need a higher percentage of partner attach or whatever. That may mean fewer partnerships and fewer activity sprayed everywhere.
Quality over quantity. Huge. That's a huge thing for me too. I'm much more about quality over quantity. If you have quality partnerships, you're actually going to see a lot more of a return versus a quantity where you're just trying to do some complex partner program. And you think that if you're going to add on, 1,000 new partners to this thing, that somehow that's going to render millions of dollars of revenue and so forth. And honestly, I mean, partners are tough because especially if you want to get their attention or if you really want to work with them very deep within their own organizations, big or small, right? You got to have those good relationships there. You have to have the trust. You have to have that relationship built in order for it to really work. And if you're trying to do too much of a quantity play, how are you developing really deep, meaningful relationships with those partners if you are spread so thin, or if you're trying to fit everyone into a box? That's the other thing. A lot of people are like, oh, we'll just put them in this program and it'll be fine. It'll work great. Well, most of the time, that's not really the case. Most of the time it's, you can't, you got to really customize what that partnership looks like in order for it to be successful.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm an advisor to a B2C company, and I was just talking to somebody over there yesterday, and they're at an early stage, and he's like, we're kind of in this thing where we're trying to expand our reach, but we also need to start getting revenue going. So we have this partner program where we're really looking at to drive revenue. I'm like, well, tell me about the partner program. 100% of it is just, we're going to set up an affiliate program and just get a whole ton of affiliates. And we're walking through the numbers and I'm like, these are really small, little bits. Yeah, maybe they'll add up over time. But he's like, so I'm trying to do this big event and I'm having I'm worried that I'm not going to get enough people to drive enough value to our affiliates to be getting affiliate revenue above. And I said, well, what if you didn't worry about the affiliate stuff, trying to get 100 different affiliates that you can use? What if you just found one or two companies that have a similar ICP and say, hey, we don't even need to pay us anything. How about we co-market this event together? You handle one of the speaking slots. You send it to your list. We'll send it to ours. We'll do a lead share arrangement of some kind. Like, just make the event a big success by going to your favorite partners. And he's like, oh. And I'm like, you don't need, he's like, we're trying to get like 100 affiliates and all. And I'm like, don't worry. Like, what if you just went deep and just did did 3 or 5? You're going to triple or, quintuple. I don't even know what you call it. 5x your reach for that event. And they're going to have some buy-in. And then you can figure out the monetization side if you're trying to do that. But I know it's a little different in B2C, but just that principle, same principle. Like, go deep.
Yeah, it's the same principle. It's absolutely the same principle. It's the same philosophy. It really applies across the board. And I think where you see it the most is the organizations that are doing it right? I mean, again, going back to Salesforce and Accenture, the biggest partnership really out there. That's what they did. They just focused on that and those plays and that relationship. And that's why it became so successful.
I think there's so much to unpack here that's really, really good. I think the audience, for those of you listening to Katie, this is the difference between, someone who's first time at the show and someone who's seen a little bit of the story. And there's a maturity here that I want to point out is I've often said that partnerships professionals have what I'll call shiny object syndrome. But what they really have is they have FOMO. And what that's indicative of is you're not sure what choices to make. So you're like, hey, that partner could be the next thing. That partner could be the next thing.
Right.
And what your executives, what your CEO, and I'm certain this is probably the case with Henry and you, they're asking you to call a shot.
Yes.
To make a choice.
Yes.
To say, no. Where are we making the money? How are we doing it?
Right.
And that's why, obviously, these conversations are so important, is that for you to truly be successful, you have to have some conviction to go, hey, these are the partners and here's why, and forego perhaps other opportunities because, hey, I know for a fact there's something over here, bird in the hand, perhaps two in the bush. We tend to find more junior folks that are out there building tons of relationships, right?
Right.
That are, onboarding tons of partners. I've certainly done that to hit a revenue objective. I think Bennett listens to this, one of my old partner managers, where we went in and we closed like hundreds of agencies as partners, hundreds.
Right.
And a year and a half, they were all out. But we sold them all. So like we drove some revenue. We sold them to like one or two of their deals, but it was like, this is clearly not strategic. This is not probably what we should do long-term. We're trying to hit a short-term objective. It wasn't until we pivoted another direction and got much more strategic on that agency side with like ROI DNA and then some bigger agencies where we started to do the great things. So if you're finding yourself in a position where you're throwing the long tail at the problem and you don't have a strategy for the long tail, it's just going to be emergent, probably going to be in a bad spot.
Yeah. I think what's given me a unique relationship with Henry and the rest of our executives at the organization is I really look at it not only in short term, but long term too. So I come up with these kind of strategies of what can we do in the short term? What can we do in the midterm? And what can we do in the long term? And how does that all fit together?
That crawl, walk, run, there it is.
Right. Yeah. And so that's really where I think, those conversations are the most fruitful. Now, obviously, there are always things that, Henry will bring up or Chris Hayes will bring up or any of the rest of our C-suite will bring up that are incredible partnership opportunities. And yes, of course, I will go and vet them and chase them and figure out, is this really right for us or not? At the end of the day, it's always their choice, right? But I'm at least coming to them with the facts. I'm coming to them with my opinion and I'm saying, hey, this is what I see. I think it's great. I don't think it's great. Right. And then we make decisions from there. And then, we kind of focus and prioritize off of that.
What you just said might have like kicked something out of my brain. That's an very interesting thought. Is there another role that has perhaps as much, like, let's say ordinal risk from like no risk at all? So let's say an SDR making 100 dials in a day to what you just said. If I go all in and I do this thing with this partner, it is perhaps the end of my company, my career, my category. Like these decisions,
it's very pressure. It's high pressure for sure.
Absolutely. Like when I was doing the Marketo and Drift negotiations and then doing that with Adobe, this was, WhatsApp group with CEO, CTO, and then, Sequoia level. Like this was high stakes stuff. And I felt very much like I am playing a game that if I screw up, well, in fact, DC's exact words to me were, don't fuck this up.
Yeah.
Like literally like, don't fuck this up was the advice because otherwise, I'm dead. Right. Like that was very clear. I don't know that there's another one that has that much ambiguity of like each choice could be never.
No, because honestly, look, a lot of the times we get compared also to chief strategy officers, right? But I see them in a very different light where they're looking more for the long-term outcome direct with the company, right? Versus where I'm looking at what are we doing externally and internally and how do we marry both of those together with our partners, right? So it's a little bit of a different view.
That's why like chief ecosystem officer, it's the combination.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of
strategy, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a mix of both, right? And so I just find it so interesting that more and more organizations are leaning in on that, and I think that it's just so important to have the right people involved so that they know how to drive it forward. But with the risk, high risk all the time.
Well, so let's talk about that with ZoomInfo for a second.
Yeah.
I want to tie these concepts together real quick because I haven't seen a company launch as many products or let's say SKUs or features as ZoomInfo has over the past several years. It's been I've referred to Henry even on the podcast as a gangster. I mean that in the most admirable and scary sense of the word because he truly is, in my opinion. He's just like an industry gangster, like get stuff done. And you've launched products where there's been competing integrations. You've, built new platforms and opened up new partner opportunities. What have some of those kind of conversations been like? Because in the build, buy, partner kind of framework, you're making a decision twofold, right? The immediate customer value, the long-term partner opportunity. It really is a strategic decision when especially when you're talking M&A, or, like, hey, that partner's pretty much dead. This partner.
Yeah, no, that happens all the time, right? So like, I know you want to talk ZoomInfo, but I'll just give an example. When I was at web.com before, I managed all of their top alliances, one of which was Google, and it did about $350 million a year, which was a third of the entire revenue. So that partnership brought in a majority of the revenue that was coming in for that organization. So that was a very high pressured risk situation where if I made the wrong move, that then affects the bottom line for our organization. And that was huge, right? And so I think that, obviously risk is always going to be there, and it's always something that we have to, watch and focus on. And then with ZoomInfo, it's hard. It's very much a orchestration type feel, right? I'm always the one that's going very cross-functionally to see, how does this fit with the sales team? How does this fit with procurement? How does this fit with finance? How does this fit with product? How does this fit with our engineering team, right? And making sure that it's all in alignment so that partnership is as successful as it possibly can be. And that's really all it takes for the most part, is you have to be just very good at speaking all the different languages in the different departments to make sure everyone is on the same page. And then when you take that to C-suite, right? Like you're taking that overall message to them and saying, hey, this is where we need to adapt. This is where we need to change. This is where we need to make, our bets, for example.
Jared, I have a quick one for both of you. Okay, so this shows my ignorance being outside of partnerships. When I hear people talk about strategic partnerships or strategic alliances, and I know, Jared, you've defined this in some various ways, and I get that to a degree. But would it be fair to say, like, maybe at least in the early days, every partnership is a strategic? Like, you have to think of it as like, if this is not a strategic partnership, am I wasting time? Like, how would you define that difference between like, oh, these are just partnerships, oh, this is a strategic alliance?
Okay, I could go on hours about this. I think in the early days, it's very different than what you're seeing today. So when we talk about strategic partnerships today, I'm thinking those are the ones that have high quality, right? We're doing a lot with them. We have a lot of customer overlap. We have natural merriment, better together stories. We're doing integrations. We're, doing co-sell motions. We're doing referral motions. We're doing product integrations so deep that each of us are kind of influencing the other, right? Because we want to make sure that it's the best for the customer at the end of the day. Early days strat partners, at least, and maybe Jared, you feel differently, but early days it was always, well, who are we making the most money with, or who is the biggest name? And that's a strategic partner, right? Like, you looked at it more of who was the biggest and who was kind of most recognizable, and then that was what you would consider as a strategic partner, even if you weren't doing nearly as many activities or things with them as somebody who maybe is a brand that isn't as recognizable.
Yep.
Right.
What I'm trying to get to is, I'm thinking here, like, okay, we're talking about this 40% of companies with no partner program. We're talking about people starting to look at this more. So if you're a company that has no, or maybe not a very mature partner program, it's almost like when you start, you're only thinking about, I mean, tell me if this is not right. You're only thinking about those like really deep strategic sort of partnerships, because you have to get those first before you can have kind of the benefit of maybe that long tail and those maybe lighter weight partnerships. Is there like an order of operations here? Because it's almost like, Jared, I love what you said about the long tail. I see the long tail as sort of a luxury. Like, when you look at what does a long tail come from? The shape of the graph. You don't have a tail by itself. Like, the tail needs a dog, right? The long tail has to have some meat. Like, where's the bulk of the value coming from?
Yep.
Get that part first. And then maybe you can start to build out, once you've got some critical mass, you can have like a long tail of lightweight partnerships where it doesn't go very deep. But it sounds like you got to start with like 1, 2, 3 strategic partners from the jump instead of
In my opinion, yes. I think that's where you gain the most insight, and you find what works best for your organization, as well as ways to rinse and repeat with others. So you're always going to want to be agnostic, especially, in a space like mine. You have to be agnostic to all those other different partners, and you may have different partnerships with each of them. However, you are doing some sort of similar rinse and repeat because you've learned from the first one. It worked really well. We made some adjustments, right? And then we implement the same kind of strategy with them as well. So it just kind of depends on the organization and depends what you're really focused on, honestly.
I'll give you kind of like an in-between. This is like a permutation of a similar answer to what you brought up, Isaac and Katie. Your answer is the way that I started to think about it whenever I was forced to make a choice. Like, you are going all in and you are figuring out something that's going to make an impact in the next 90 days. And I need the plan by the end of this week or you're fired. And it was like, wait a second, you recruit, how did that happen? Like, that was what a situation I walked into. And I was like, well, how do I make that choice? And what I decided that I think I believe now more than ever is you have to choose the market first. And that's when I decided that I needed to be a market-led entrepreneur.
Yes.
And you don't choose the partner, you choose the market. And what do I mean by that? Well, the market is, where are my customers, right? So if you're an ICP hopper as a company, God bless you, but I will never be at one of those companies again. Like,
yeah.
ICP hopping is like you have a hammer and you're looking for nails.
Yes.
Right? You're like, my product. That compounds across the entire business, especially with partners, where you waste so much time.
Oh, who are your partners? Oh, we can partner with anyone.
Yeah. And, oh my gosh, we partner with everybody, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I think the real takeaway here for people, and from my vantage point, is who is the best conduit to the most customers that you want, right? So who has that relationship, that owns that audience, that has that trust? And then I would also add another vector that will drive your partner acquisition and future partners from. So if I'm an early stage startup, I am typically orienting towards an existing ecosystem, not just a partnership, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to partner twofold. I'm going to choose, let's say, a tech leader in that ecosystem, parent company, and a couple service ones. And I'm going to really focus on igniting a core customer base where I can have this brush fire that burns brighter than any other one.
Yep.
To replicate out. So I think the answer is probably similar. The lens is just market first. Where is the customer? And then is there a long tail of partners where I'll get, the outsized, 20% that perform, right? Available. So if you were to go do that, and bet the farm, so to speak, on let's say from a partner strategy around, let's say something nascent like OpenAI.
Yeah.
Market, yes, right? There's market, but where's there is no ecosystem yet. Like, that'd be a very scary play long term. So you might be able to do something really cool with OpenAI,
right?
But that long tail is terrifying. What do you do next?
Yeah. No, I think that's the hardest things. Look, all of the Gen AI stuff right now is obviously a hot topic. Everybody's chatting about it. Everybody's, having their opinions on it. I think where partnerships are going to play a pretty solid role is you're going to have to find what that strategy is that works together and pushing that forward for the long term. And that evolves over a long period of time. So if we're talking about, I'm trying to think of a good example. So for Gen AI, if you're thinking about it with a partner, and let's say they're the ones who have, the foundational piece that you need for, let's say, chat, right? And you want to implement that into your chat bot because you want to eradicate your SDRs, let's say, and you want to implement that, which then automatically pushes everything over and knows what to do and all things, right? You want to find a partner that obviously feeds into that, but at the same time is also evolving that Gen AI so you can take it further. So maybe now you're focused on SDRs first, but now you want to take it to, now I want to take it to my customer success team, or now I want to take it to, these other areas of your business that is also hyper beneficial, right? So like, that's kind of the way that at least I would look at it. Now, again, Gen AI is a very new space and there's no real, silver bullet that's going to tell us what works long term versus short term and what we need to do now. I think it's more about you need to just be really smart. And going back to exactly what you said, Jared, which is that market, right? Like focus on the areas that you know work well, focus on the niches that you know work well, and then work together on that and push it forward.
100%. And what I would say is know your customer, know your partner, right? Show me you know me. So for example, whenever you're making that choice, I talk about it in the strategic alliances chapter I wrote in the Partner Hacker Handbook. It's a kind of amalgamation of like the sumo advantage and a little bit of Chris Voss, never split the difference, is like finding that black swan is, what is that lever that you can move for that ecosystem partner, that first big, center of gravity that you're going to get the big win with and have other wins fall out the other side. What's in it for them? Why are you important to them? And it's phenomenal when you can nail that and understand, hey, here's a top 3 business initiative for your company. We know it because I know you. And here's exactly how we help drive it. And here's the proof points. And it's amazing how few people will show up to a partner conversation with that. Here's what we do for you.
Yeah.
Right. And why we're going to be so important to you. And if you do it, you can say crazy stuff, which I've said a bunch. I've said this in several partner conversations that, I got to get Brad Coffey on here so that way I can prove that I didn't say that to him in our first convo. As I said, I'm going to be your number 1 partner globally in less than 1 year. And he's like, who the heck is this crazy kid? I'm like, no, I have the answer. I know I'm going to be, and I know why. And then they go, well, that was very different than every other partner conversation I've had. You actually had a strong opinion. And that's actually the tenet of the sumo advantage. Like one of the only books on how to do alliances is like, look, you're the entrepreneur, call your shot. What is in it for them? If you do not have a strong opinion, guess what? No one's coming to you and being like, hey, here's how you become our best partner. Yeah, you and everybody else.
No, you're the one leading the charge. You're the one
Right.
who has to figure out what that strategy is and how to actually execute on it. So nobody's going to just hand it to you on a silver platter. It takes a lot of work, right? And it takes a lot of grit to be able to get through it. But I think the most successful partnerships, they focus on those things, right? They focus on those relationships, not only just to, spin up in conversation and think of, art of the possible, but they're actually getting very tactical. They're getting very in the weeds. They're going, hey, this is how we benefit you. How do you want to go to market together, right? Or, this is how we're benefiting your customers and our customers at the same time, because it's just such a natural merriment between our organizations. It's easy for us to be able to just go and chat with all of our customers about it, right? Or we have customers already saying how great it is. Those are the strongest. Those are by far. But those, again, you're totally right. You have to really drive that forward, and you have to have the entrepreneurial spirit to be able to have success in that area. And being a generalist is the best way to do that, because then you have a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, but you see the big picture. And then you bring in those experts in the different areas and you say, hey, this is why I see how great this is. Let's chat with this person in this area. Let's chat with that person in this area. Figure out how to execute.
Katie, I want to ask you something. I actually don't know, Jared, if we've ever asked anybody this on the show. There's a side to the partnerships job that doesn't get talked about a lot, because we've been focusing on when how do you find a partner? When you want a partner, how do you win them? How do you find the mutual advantage? How do you implement it? How do you win in the internal battles? But there's a part of the role, and the more successful you get, the more successful your company gets, the more this becomes a part of the role, where you have to do the opposite, where you have to be the bad guy. You have to tell people no. And I have learned partner people in general are very nice. They're very kind. They have a little bit of nice guy syndrome. Maybe it's because so many of them are Canadian. And so how do you handle those learning to be, because what I've noticed is there's a lot of maybe if I just have benign neglect, I won't actually have to have a hard conversation and say no, and they'll just sort of go, versus even the mental bandwidth necessary of half-assing a bunch of these that you just know aren't really going anywhere, instead of just saying, hey, look, we tried something, didn't work, sorry, we're taking a different direction, can't do anything together. How do you get that down? Because that's something I think some partner people listening to the show, I know, because they're nice people. I've met many of them. Learning to have the hard conversation and say, this isn't a fit.
So this is like an early thing that I talk about too. Every time folks come to me for advice or things like that, I was like, you need to be equally as good at delivering bad news as you are good news, both internally and externally to the partner. You can imagine, obviously, ZoomInfo is a pretty large organization. I get inbound requests to be a partner with us. I'm telling you, hundreds at a time. And I've had to learn how to be very transparent and very upfront. Now, I'm not ever going to be nasty about it. I'm not going to, be this kind of bearer of bad news all the time, but I'm definitely going to say, hey, look, while I see that there is value here, it's just not in our top priorities, but that may change, next quarter, 6 months from now, a year from now. So I definitely want to continue the conversation, but I want to be upfront with you that this is not something we're going to get tactical on or execute on in the near term, right? And most of the time, if you start the conversation that way, they say, oh yeah, completely understood. We're in the same boat, or, whatever it is, we're just in these kind of ideation phases and wanted to pick your brain. And then you're already going into it saying, hey, we're not going to spend time on this. We want to be really strategic with you. Let's circle back on this in the future when it actually makes sense, or when the timing is better, or whatever that looks like.
There needs to be a name for that persona, the one that's just generally a little bit everywhere, that gets along with everyone, skirts by without actually getting anything done. And people are like, what do you actually do here? Because those people do exist. And
They do.
They might be interesting. They might be neat. They might be hard to, let's say, identify or get things done. But I think that can be a dangerous persona. And I love what you said, that you need to be well-versed in having, difficult, delivering bad news. One of my favorite phrases is hard conversations, easy life, hard choices, easy life. You have to be able to have the courage to stand up and actually put your foot down and say, no, this is the thing that we're doing. What hill are you willing to die on? That's a hard combo. That's difficult news. That's saying, hey, we're foregoing these other things.
Right.
And that's, I think, generally just really good leadership. And I think there's a good opportunity for partnerships folks to, think like an entrepreneur, right? If you don't want to come out of this role or this position with some cross-departmental, leadership component, it's probably not the role for you. Right? If you don't want to run your own business or be able to lead multiple departments, I don't think that partnership, being a partner leader is probably the right home for you.
There's also the opposite side of that too. If you're looking to get glorification, or if you're trying to get your name on everything, or you're trying to somehow say, oh, this was because of me, partnerships is also not the place for you. Partnerships, it's very rare that they get called out in these big orchestrated deals, for example, like when there's some sort of huge co-sell motion that happened between partners. Well, that's because of the partnership team, but you're not hearing them being called out about it. Most of the time, you're just hearing about, oh, these AMs worked together and they strategized and all the things, and they made this come together and it was great. So I do think that it's a little bit of you have to be really passionate about what you do, and you're also, choosing your battles, digging your heels in. At the same time, you need to also realize that you're not going to get necessarily the appreciation or, glorification after the fact, because most of the time partnerships is really this background motion that's making all these things happen, but they're not necessarily in the forefront. So it's interesting, right? You get a little bit of that juxtaposition where you kind of get both sides of it. And you have to be comfortable there. You have to be able to be, okay, I'm cool there. I don't need to be, called out on everything. But at the same time, I'm also going to really stand by this and tell them, look, this is what we need to do. And this is the best strategic play. And I'm going to make it happen, right? That's the risk. That's also the risk, right? So you're putting your name on it.
That's the risk. Any courage comes along with risk. I couldn't think of a better way to cap this one. Katie Landaal. Katie, thank you so much for joining us on PartnerUp and putting a kind of second story and a new twist on the ZoomInfo chapter. Excited to continue to see this innovation in the crazy wild world of tech right now. We'll see you. I think this will be dropping the week before Inbound at HubSpot. So Isaac, I don't know that we have a URL or anything, but for those of you that are listening, you can find your way to this secret invite-only event, Nearbound at Night. If you don't know about it, let us, and you're going to Inbound, you can shoot us a DM. It's invite-only. By the time this drops, we'll probably be close to sold out anyways. And excited to hang with you and everyone there. Anything else, Isaac, for the folks out there?
Nothing that we can talk about yet.
Yes. Yes.
All exciting things coming. I'm hoping also this bridges that gap a little bit, Jared, so we're not getting poked at so much on LinkedIn with your recent post last week. So,
I was wondering if you saw that and you were going to bring it up. Of course, you bring it up at the very beginning. I
was going to, but I didn't want to, start it off on rough waters. But yeah.
Well, hard conversations, easy life. All right, folks, we'll see you later. No.
Wait. What post was it? I don't know if I'm caught up on this.
Oh, so Jared posted something.
Kind of went a little viral.
A little bit viral. He posted something
about
ZoomInfo.
That's right.
Yes. How, we obviously went down in valuation and things like that. And he just kind of went on a rant about it.
We should have started with a fight
about the demand side, not the ZoomInfo execution side, which if there's any company that we've seen in my lifetime that can respond to how change in buyer behavior, it's ZoomInfo.
Yeah.
So that was the point I was trying to make. I was definitely not trying to just call out ZoomInfo. Definitely not. But very, very fair play.
No, it's fine. That's just, what happens. It totally happens. But like I said, hopefully this gives you a little bit more insight that, we do take it really seriously and we do really value our customers and really want to make sure that we're doing right by them. While we've made mistakes in the past, any organization has. But I definitely can tell you we're hyper-focused on bouncing back or pivoting or doing what we need to do, again, to make it right for the customer. So,
well, and that's why I think the transition and the thing that I laid out, Katie, to kind of tie this back from like me poking fun and then you deservedly poking fun back, is that I think it marked the end of ZoomInfo as a data company. And it truly needs to mark the beginning of ZoomInfo as a platform.
Well, I can tell you right now, there's some really awesome, cool stuff coming. Obviously can't talk about it, but it'll definitely show you how we're differentiating ourselves from just being known for data. I think it's some pretty exciting stuff. So
I just like this idea, Jared, of having a guest scheduled and then like the week before they come on, you just do a post.
Yeah, I thought that was ironic timing, by the way.
Let's take shots at our guests before they come on. I like this format. We're going to go.
I can't believe we did this at the end. So for those of you that stayed all the way to the very end when you thought we were signing off, you got the entertaining part. Katie, Isaac, thank you so much. Partner up. Peace out. We will see you all next time.